Objective Charlie has been lost.
It's no secret that Battlefield 5 hasn't been universally received with open arms, from its low pre-order sales to the numerous criticisms raised by fans during the first beta. While problems with the game's design and performance have already been well documented, there are a number of external factors which could also be to blame for the negative reception. Many people see World War I and World War II as being very similar, for instance, making it difficult to spot the changes to Battlefield 5's gameplay. You also potentially have historical shooter fatigue, with Battlefield 1 doing World War II in 2016 and Call of Duty already having revisited World War II in 2017. Consumer confidence in EA being at an all-time low after the disastrous Battlefront 2 launch is also another likely candidate for the high level of criticism. I can personally relate to all of this because I spent countless hours with Battlefield 1, Call of Duty World War II and also Battlefront 2. While I wouldn't say that I was super pumped about Battlefield 5 heading into the beta, I was still keen to see how differently it played compared to the previous installments. The biggest question I wanted answered though, and this is probably something that rings true for most people, is whether or not Battlefield 5 will be good enough to set aside all of these problems.
Attention, objective dog has been lost.
I've spent a decent amount of time with Battlefield 5's open beta, trying out the various modes, maps, weapons and so on. My first impressions were actually not very positive at all, but after persisting with it, my opinion gradually changed from pretty negative to cautiously optimistic. Now there's a lot that Battlefield 5 doesn't get right, and I think a lot of the criticism that it's received so far is justified. I don't want to focus too much on the negatives. I will give my thoughts on what I think isn't working, but what I mainly wanted to talk about is what I like about the game and why I'm excited for its launch in November. Battlefield 5 has all the right ingredients to be an excellent game. It comes from a franchise with a long and successful history, more or less. It has an experienced and capable development team behind it. Again, more or less. But this doesn't mean there isn't reason to be concerned, and after playing the beta it's obvious that the game is far from finished. For as much as I enjoyed the beta, my biggest concern still remains. I'm not worried about how engaging the moment-to-moment gunplay is, or if its progression system will be deep enough. My biggest concern is if Battlefield 5 will be yet another box of EA bullshit. Okay, so maybe that's taking it a little too far, but I don't think I'm the only one whose faith in EA has run out. The two most recent games from DICE have both suffered from poor design choices and questionable business practices, not to mention the various issues that seem to carry over from game to game. Some of these problems have been around since Battlefield 3, which means that they're aware of these problems but can't fix them, which is concerning. The other possibility is that they know about them but can't be bothered fixing them, which is even more concerning. Or worst case scenario, they're unaware of these problems entirely, which is terrifying. So the biggest challenge for DICE with Battlefield 5 is creating a game that remains fun, fair and functional for at least the 2 years between titles. DICE have always excelled at creating a solid experience when you're in a match, but it's the experience outside of this which has long been a weakness. I'm talking about the lobby system, the menus, matchmaking and the post-launch support. This is what I have the most beef with, and so far it looks like DICE have made a few improvements in this area. It's far from perfect, but it was a pleasant surprise to see some of these items working without issues. Matchmaking in DICE games has always been a massive point of frustration for me. Squatting up with friends and finding games together has rarely been simple, but in the beta it worked well for the most part. I never got dropped into an empty lobby or struggled to find matches when partied up. The UI is a bit hit and miss and I experienced quite a few crashes, but overall it was quick and easy to play with friends. This might sound like I'm being overly excited about a pretty basic feature, and I guess to a certain degree that's true, but this is a big win if matchmaking is this solid at launch. I can't tell you how much time I've wasted in the past trying to find games when partied up, and having to resort to workarounds to achieve something that most other games do without effort. So for it to just work here was a big step forward. Both Battlefield 1 and Battlefront 2 had issues with their DLC, whether it was problems with splitting the player base or not delivering on promises. DICE have stated that this game is intended to be a live service, making it their second crack at this approach after Battlefront 2. It remains to be seen how this plays out long term, but Battlefield 5's game design choices appear to be heavily focused on player engagement long term. The most obvious example of this is the weapon progression system and customization options, and this is undoubtedly how the game will be monetized now that there isn't a season pass. It's impossible to know how fair this system will be based on the beta because not everything was available. Character customization, for example, wasn't turned on, and there was no sign of the microtransactions that will inevitably be included. My suspicion is that in-game credits and progression were earned faster than normal to give players a chance to test as much as possible. This made it difficult to gauge how much of a grind the final game would be, but the core concept felt like a big improvement over Battlefield 1. Weapon progression has been a hot topic since the start of the beta. Unlike some of the previous games, weapon progression is quite linear. As you rank a weapon up, it unlocks new abilities, and you have to choose a specific direction to take it, whether it be mobility focused, accuracy improvements, and so on. I personally like this approach, although I can understand why some people would be less enthusiastic about it. Again, my suspicion is that what was in the beta was a scaled back version of the full system, and at launch there'll be more options and possibly more flexibility. Even if there isn't though, there's a huge amount of potential here, and it doesn't seem like this would be a difficult thing to change if the vanilla system isn't popular. So let's talk about the gunplay, because this has been another hot topic. Battlefield 5's time to kill is much lower than the previous game, although maybe not as low as Battlefield 4, and this obviously has a pretty big impact on how gunfights play out. Battlefield 1's high time to kill, for instance, makes it possible to find cover and survive if you're getting shot at. Battlefield 5's low time to kill, on the other hand, gives you a very limited time to react, and it makes the game feel less forgiving. I've heard people compare the time to kill to Call of Duty, and some players are pissed off that it encourages the run, shoot, die, repeat style of gameplay that Call of Duty is known for. I agree that in some ways it does feel similar, and this is probably why I like it, but there's a good reason why it needs to be fast. Battlefield 5 allows all classes to revive and manually top up their health. Players can also build fortifications, so not only do players have more options to take cover, squads are now more resilient. If the time to kill was the same as Battlefield 1, it would be very difficult to slow down a team's momentum, and this mechanic would be overpowered. Whereas now, there's a significant risk involved because you can be killed so much faster than you can revive. It also acts as a comeback mechanic that rewards players for surviving tough situations and close calls. I agree that the time it takes to revive could be slightly faster, but this change overall is a welcome one. Some people are floating around the idea that the medic class is now redundant, which I disagree with. Medics can revive much faster than the other classes, and they can also revive non-squad members. This makes them much more useful in large battles as well as being more versatile overall. Medics can also supply additional health packs, which all classes can now carry. Health still regenerates automatically, although much slower than in the past, making manual health top-ups an important strategic component of combat. I think moving to a manual healing system was a smart move. Any system that puts control in the player's hands and forces them to make a choice makes the game more tactical. There is a sweet spot in terms of balance though, and this is something that the ammo resupplying system hasn't got right yet. I can see the intent in that having less starting ammo puts a larger emphasis on having a well-rounded squad. The problem is that it's currently way too low, and it's very easy to run out of ammo in the middle of a gunfight, even if you have a support player close by. This system is particularly punishing for defending players who might be holding down a position that's not close to an ammo station. This problem can be easily fixed though. One option would be to simply give players more starting ammo, and I believe this is a change that's already happening. Another solution could be to allow players to sacrifice items in their loadout for more ammunition, a bit like Call of Duty's Pick 10 system. Either way, I don't think this is a difficult problem to solve. Another reason why the time to kill needs to be fast is because of the way the spawning works. The new Parrot Cam, which lets you spectate squad members after dying, gives you a much better idea of when and who to spawn on. You can also provide intel to your team while spectating, and it dramatically reduces the risk involved in spawning in on your squad members. Having a lower time to kill prevents an entire squad from spawning in at the same time and overwhelming the opposition with a human shield. Having more tactical spawns is definitely a welcome change, and it reduces the likelihood of spawning into an unwinnable situation. So let's discuss the presentation. As you'd expect from a DICE game, it looks and sounds great, although you do get the feeling this is an early unoptimized build. There are a lot of rough edges and areas that look unfinished. I think at this stage Battlefield 1 is still the better looking game, but it's likely that DICE were more concerned with testing stability and features rather than high quality textures. Visuals from a technical point of view might not be that great at this stage, but the art direction is on point. The maps are well designed and beautifully detailed. Characters animate in more ways than ever too, with just about every action having a visual cue. The timing of some of these animations still needs work, such as the speed of ammo and health pickups, but being able to see what has happened rather than learning some arbitrary audio or UI cue is far more intuitive. What's interesting, and I'm guessing deliberate, is the absence of our one-armed friend from the trailer. Either she plays a less significant role in the game than the trailer suggests, or DICE decided to avoid further controversy by not including her in the beta. Undoubtedly, she was one of the key reasons that many felt that Battlefield 5 would be less realistic. I'm no historian, but from what was in the beta, it looks to be on par with Battlefield 1 in terms of presenting a believable setting. Audio design is just as impressive as the previous game, and I have to make a special mention of the menu music. Johan Sodervisk and Lorne Balfe, who wrote the score for Battlefield 1, have returned, along with Patrick Andren. These guys all have a background in film and it really shows. Battlefield 5's score is absolutely incredible. DICE have clearly tried a lot of new ideas with this game in the hope of mixing up the formula. While there's still plenty of work to do before launch, I don't think that there's anything fundamentally broken that can't be fixed. Betas typically only give us a small taste of the game, and although this beta was pretty substantial, it's hard to know how close to the final product it was. We've already seen DICE A/B test Battlefield 5 during the various alphas, so it's anyone's guess what version of the game they decide to launch with. But with that said, I'm optimistic about how it's coming along. I know I should probably be more cautious given EA's recent track record, but based on what I played in the beta, I am looking forward to seeing the final product. But let me know if you got to play the beta and what you thought of it. I think the biggest failure of this year's game so far has been the marketing, and as a result, many people have been turned off before playing it. So if you didn't get a chance to play it, I'd be keen to get your perspective too. Drop your thoughts in the comments below for me, but otherwise, thanks for watching.
Alert! We have lost objective Anton!
Deckung, ich hatte Granate!